Yo, what is up guys? It is your boy IzuKage here with a one-shot series for what if Deku was a zombie. So this is going to be the start of many Halloween inspired what ifs on my channel. So I hope you guys do go on to enjoy the video. As always, Discord link in the description. Also, I'm planning to do a Nitro giveaway over on Discord for Halloween, but more on that at a later date. But with that said, let's just get right into the what if.
Time I ain't late. Still rockin' by money. Sit back and hey, smoking that shit too.
So we start this what if off at the birth of Izuku, but a major difference was Izuku was born with an extremely rare disease, so rare that has only been one other case, and that was 50 years ago in Italy. So you can imagine the doctors know nothing about the disease this old that wasn't even in their country. So they classify it as a quirk, and the main feature of Izuku's quirk, I'm doing air quotes, is that it makes his skin green and it has a sort of decayed look. But Inko was happy her son was somewhat healthy, so we fast forward to Izuku's time in school, and a lot of kids thought his skin was pretty cool, and Bakugo really admired Izuku because even though he or Inko didn't realize it, but Izuku didn't feel any pain, so when he fell or got injured in any way, he just walked it off. And to kids, you can imagine how they saw Izuku as this higher being who never cries no matter what. But as his classmates got older, Izuku wasn't as accepted. So let's skip to the day where Bakugo would activate his quirk for the first time. So Izuku, he just walked into class and he sees a bunch of people surrounding Bakugo, and he rushes over to see what's happening because Bakugo is his best friend and he wants a glimpse of whatever this could be. And when he does see it, he sees sparks coming off of Bakugo's palms, and everyone in the room is amazed. The teachers are hyping Bakugo up, saying with a quirk like this, he can definitely become the #1 hero. And Izuku kept trying to get Bakugo's attention, but the crowd around him kept pushing Izuku further and further back until he just stood there watching as everyone who was, once his friends just forgot about him in an instant. So when class started, Izuku kept to himself for the most part, and when it was break time, Bakugo walked up to Izuku and said, "I hardly noticed you were here. Everything alright? You seem kinda off today." And Izuku said, he just replied simply, "Yeah, I'm good. Also, cool quirk, hopefully becomes something strong." And the two start having a conversation like the good old times, like old friends. But we fast forward another 4 years, and Bakugo and Izuku's friendship has not remained the same. Bakugo's ego rose sky high every time someone complimented his quirk, and instead of looking up to Izuku, he looked down on him. And not only Bakugo, but his entire class, like Izuku's entire class, looked down to him. They saw Deku as the weirdo with no quirk, and his skin always looks like he's sick or something. And a lot of people avoided Izuku. Basically, everyone avoided him, including teachers. So right now, Izuku, he's still in elementary school. He's in grade 3, and this is at the end of school. Izuku and Bakugo, they normally walk together since they live so close, but Izuku would try to leave before or after him so he wouldn't be like bullied, pushed around, all that stuff. On this day, as soon as the bell rang, he ran out of school, and Izuku thought he had gotten out quick enough, but Bakugo was running up and grabbed Izuku's bag and said, "So, you thought you could go without me?" And Izuku at this point started to get annoyed. He's at his tipping point, and he ripped his bag from Bakugo's grip and said, "Can you stop acting like some high and mighty, like you're above everyone, because you're not." And this hit Bakugo right in his ego. Bakugo grabbed Izuku and pulled him into an alleyway and said, "You freak, "Monster, you should be happy I have the humility to even walk next to you." And he threw Izuku into the side of a dumpster, and Izuku felt nothing though, and he looked up and Bakugo said, "Maybe I'll give you a permanent reminder who's stronger." And he held his palm in front of Izuku's face and set off an explosion, but Izuku ducked quickly and instinctively bit into Bakugo's arm. And Izuku held on, and Bakugo was freaking out and kept punching Izuku over and over, trying to get him off. And then he punched him in the jaw, breaking it, so like he escaped from Izuku's clutches. And Bakugo ran off screaming, "You damn freak!" So while Izuku stood there, he started drooling. Izuku just tasted the single best thing he had ever in his life. It was sweet yet bitter, and the texture, don't get me started. Nothing he's ever tasted comes close to human flesh. And Izuku got a hold of himself and snapped his jaw into place and started going back home, just trying to fight the urge to bite into anyone he sees. So Izuku, he gets home, and when he reaches to turn the doorknob, sparks fly off of his hand and he explodes the door handle, and Izuku stumbles back in surprise. And Inko runs up to the front door and peeks through the window to see, well, what that sound was. And when she does, she sees Izuku, but something was different about him. Izuku was wearing some drip. He got off the website Fandom. Fandom is a website where you guys can get fire anime merch. Check them out using the link in the description and use code IzuKage at checkout for 5% off. Now, let's get back into the what if. So, Inko, she opens the door from the inside and she can smell the burning wood and metal, and she looks at the door handle and sees that it's completely burnt up and the door itself is kind of burnt as well. So Izuku, he had to come up with some elaborate excuse to get out of that one. But when he's alone in his room, Izuku, his mind starts racing on how he was even able to do that. But then his mind went to Bakugo. He's the only person he knew that had explosions, and he's thinking, did he get his quirk from biting him? He was confused but had to do more tests, so for the rest of the day, Izuku started getting a hand of Bakugo's quirk, but around 2 hours after getting home, it went away. And Izuku, he kept trying and trying, but he can't use the quirk anymore. He doesn't know why, but he'll soon come to realize that every time he acquires a quirk, there's a time limit for how long he can use someone's quirk for. So since this was a Friday, Izuku would spend his weekend testing the capabilities of his quirk. On Saturday, he would go out in a hoodie and a mask covering his face and stayed in the dark, and he would just wait and wait. Then this guy would come down the street and Izuku quickly put his hoodie up and his mask on to hide his identity. And when the guy was walking past him, Izuku grabbed him and dragged him into a silent alleyway. And the guy, he's trying to wiggle free, but Izuku was surprisingly strong and the guy couldn't even move. Izuku said, "If you don't want to die, tell me what your quirk is." And the guy was terrified but managed to get out. It's called Bird. I can turn my hands into wings and fly. And Izuku said, sounds interesting. And he took a huge bite out of the man's shoulder and ripped off skin and muscle. And Izuku threw him down, and after swallowing, Izuku focused and could turn his hands into these massive wings. I mean, he didn't know how to fly yet, but it was still cool. I mean, he just got the quirk, so of course he wouldn't really know how to use it. And Izuku would do this a total of 9 more times that day, getting a variety of quirks like rubber hands, freeze breath, echolocation. But while Izuku was having fun with these powers, every one of them, like every one of his victims, reported Izuku to the police, and this case was given to Heroes to deal with, specifically Aizawa. And he got the file to look at, and it seemed like there's someone going around biting people, and they tried extracting DNA from the bite wound, but they came up with nothing. Whenever they looked at the sample of saliva they managed to gather, they just saw these diseases like fighting themselves under the microscope. They couldn't explain it. They've never seen anything like this. So whoever this person was, their body is basically fighting itself. It is so odd. They don't know what to think of it. So Aizawa at this point, all he's gonna do is look around and hope he gets lucky, because the description they have of the kid isn't really that clear. They just have the fact that it looks like a kid, like they had a smaller stature, so they're guessing it's a kid, maybe around like 5th or 6th grade level. They're not 100% sure. So the next day, Izuku goes out and does the same thing, but he has an experiment in mind. Because with the first guy, he took a chunk of flesh, like a huge chunk of flesh, and ate it. But with some of the other victims, he took a smaller piece. And what Izuku realized is the more he ate, the longer he had the quirk for. So he wanted to test his theory. He obviously did it in a different location this time, so he wouldn't get caught. And after getting home, Izuku would time all of the quirks and wrote down how much he ate, if it was a larger chunk, a medium chunk, and a small chunk. And what he realized is the larger pieces would extend up to 4 hours, and the smaller and medium size would last like 2 hours or less. Some of them even like 30 minutes if Izuku just nibbled on them. But the main question on Izuku's mind is, what if he ate a whole person? So while Izuku was going through his experiments, the story of the villain eating people is coming out, and he's been giving the nickname the zombie villain. And at this point, 15 people have been injured due to the zombie, and Izuku obviously doesn't want to get caught, so he stops his experiments for now. This lasts for 5 years, up to Izuku's last day in middle school. And Aizawa at this point, he has had no luck with the zombie case, and after 2 years of searching, he just stopped because they just considered the fact that the villain stopped all his activities, so he isn't really of a threat anymore. So the investigation got passed down to the police, but they had no luck, so they just shelved the case. So Izuku, he's sitting in class, and this is the last day of middle school. Then the teacher comes in with a stack of papers, and he says, I was going to hand out these job aptitude tests, but I know you all want to be heroes. And he throws the paper up into the air, and everyone, they're going wild, they're showing off their quirks. And then the teacher, he quiets everyone down and says, we actually have a student that is going to UA. And the teacher points out that Bakugo, he applied to UA, but when he's looking through the application forms, he says to Izuku that he didn't apply to a school. He's asking if it was a mistake. Does he want to apply to anything? And Izuku, he just straight up says he doesn't know. I mean, he still wants to be a hero, but he isn't strong enough yet. But when he does, he'll become the greatest hero by any means necessary. And the teacher honestly has no clue what Izuku is over there rambling on about, but he's like, yeah, okay, alright, sure, whatever you say. And Bakugo, this entire time, he's suspicious of Izuku since ever since they were little. He always admired All Might. He wasn't as of a huge fan as he was in canon, but still, he thought of him as a great example of what heroes should strive to be. So after the teacher finishes up his announcements, they don't really have anything to teach for today, so he actually lets them out earlier than he was supposed to, but he was like, let the kids have some fun. So class ends and everyone gets dismissed, and Izuku throws on his hoodie and starts walking out, and he takes a different route than canon because he wants to scout out the area he'll be going to later tonight, check for cameras, any heroes patrolling. And when he finds the perfect spot, he goes home and just waits for night to come. So real quick, we switch perspectives to Aizawa in Principal Nezu's office. And this is 2 days ago, and they're just having casual conversation, and Nezu is looking through some old police reports, and that's when he comes across the zombie case. And Nezu asked Aizawa, "Whatever happened to this case?" And Aizawa looked over it and said, "Oh, that was years ago. The victims described him as a very strong kid that ate flesh, but with that little information, I didn't get anywhere with it." And Nezu said, "So, you're saying Detective Aizawa couldn't solve the case?" And Nezu started laughing, and Aizawa said, "Shut up, you little talking rat. You wouldn't be able to do it either." And Nezu said, "Oh, is that a challenge? Well, in that case, the winner owes the loser a favor." And Aizawa says, "Deal." So Nezu and Aizawa work against each other to come up with plausible descriptions and a location for the zombie villain. And the first thing they notice is when they mark off all the areas where there was an attack from the villain, it formed a circle telling them that he might live within the circle, so he doesn't want to go too far from home. And that would confirm the fact that he was a kid living with his parents. So with only that, Aizawa and Nezu starts patrolling that night. So while Aizawa, he's out on foot, Nezu, he's doing it from the comfort of his own office using drones and drones that have heat sensors, different things like that, very high tech. So back to the present day, and with nightfall finally out, Izuku puts on his mask and hoodie and he says to himself, "I'm doing this for the greater good." And he goes to the area he planned to, and when he gets there, it's extremely quiet, and Izuku does his usual stick, just lying in wait in an alley. And about 20 minutes go by, and Izuku hears footsteps coming, and he jumps out and sees a woman with her child, and the kid hugs onto her mom's leg scared. And Izuku, he's distraught by this. He backs up and goes into the alleyway and leans against the wall and holds his head, and the entire time the image of the terror in the kid's face is imprinted into Izuku's mind. But he knows what he has to do. So Izuku lies in wait for another half an hour, and he can hear someone walking, coming closer and closer. So he jumps out and grabs this guy and throws him into the alley, and this is where he starts feasting on him. And I won't get into details, but when Izuku is done, all that's left is bones. And he looks down at his hand, wondering what kind of quirk he got. And when he lifted up his hands, a lightning bolt starts shooting off his fingers. And Izuku smiled and said, "This might come in handy." So Izuku does this again to 4 more people, gaining access to a variety of quirks. So Aizawa, who's in the general area, he's hopping from rooftop to rooftop, and while running, he hears a scream off in the distance, and it immediately goes silent. This rose a bunch of major red flags for Aizawa, and he went to check it out. And when he gets there, he was at a loss for words. The alleyway was covered in blood and remains of people, and Aizawa was looking around for anyone in the general area, and then he sees someone in a black hoodie running away, and he chases after the kid, and when he turns the corner, the kid is just gone. But Aizawa continues following his trail, and not long after, the kid reappears in front of a store. And Izuku at this point is struggling to use an invisibility quirk he just got. He has to hold his breath to stay invisible, but running isn't helping him. So Aizawa jumps down from the top of the building and wraps Izuku around in his scarf. And he says, "Don't run, kid, I can help you." And Izuku wasn't buying it, and he grabbed Aizawa's scarf and sent lightning through it, and Aizawa was stunned long enough, giving Izuku some time to free himself. But Aizawa got in close, and they started fighting hand to hand, but with more experience, Aizawa got the upper hand really quickly and landed a huge blow into Izuku's chest, which sent him flying into a wall. But Izuku got up like nothing ever happened. He didn't feel anything, and the injury in his chest just healed itself. And Aizawa said, "I might have to call in help for this one." And Izuku charged at him, and At the same time, Aizawa tried removing his quirk, but Izuku just kept charging and slammed him into a wall, and he kept slamming him over and over, and soon two low-rank heroes arrived on scene and surrounded Izuku. So he stopped and looked over his shoulders, and Aizawa tried reasoning with Izuku like, why are you doing this? We can end this peacefully if you give up. And Izuku said, I'm doing this so I can become a hero. Those were just unlucky sacrifices for the greater good. And Aizawa realized Izuku wasn't lying, but it's now his job to straighten him out. And one of the low-ranking heroes took a deep breath and breathed out a bubble made out of flammable gas, and the other hero threw a fireball at it, and a huge explosion went off. And when the smoke cleared, Izuku was on the ground, like face planted into the ground, and he was all charred up and he was unrecognizable. And Aizawa, he let off a sigh of relief and said he can finally bring this kid in. And when he went to pick Izuku up, Izuku started healing, and he grabbed Aizawa's foot and threw him into the bubble hero, and Izuku got up and he was mad and started concentrating, starting to use the physical augment quirk and the lightning quirk he got, and sparks started flying off his body, creating something similar to the lightning cloak. And Izuku started charging up this blast, and like sparks are coming off from his hands, and he drew his hand back and shot it towards Aizawa, and Izuku looked up to make sure he got a hit, and that's when he saw someone standing over him. Izuku looked up and he saw All Might standing in front of him blocking the attack, and Aizawa then said, "It's about time, All Might, what took you so long?" And All Might laughed and said, "I just got caught up, but now that I am here, let's take care of this villain." Izuku, he wasn't scared at all by All Might, and he threw his hand back and punched All Might, shouting, "You're calling me a villain?" But All Might grabbed his hands and shifted it up and broke Izuku's entire arm, and then All Might said, "I hope this doesn't hurt too bad." Detroit smash! And he punched Izuku right in the chest, sending him flying down the street, and he hit his head and started rolling before coming to a complete stop. And Izuku started coughing up blood because his ribs were stabbing into his heart, and because his heart was punctured, like he couldn't heal because it's not gonna just push them out, push the bones out of his heart, I mean. And All Might grabbed Izuku and took him to the hospital so he would obviously live. But after his operation, Izuku was taken into custody, and awaiting his sentence, Izuku was put into a holding cell in the police station. And Izuku had a lot of time to think about his actions, a week exactly, but soon the silence was lifted when he got a visitor. Izuku looked up and saw Aizawa and the police chief, and Aizawa says, "You're a monster for what you did to those people, but I'll give you a chance to atone for your sins. You'll be training with me, or you could go with the judge's orders and be sent to a maximum security prison where you will stay for life. The choice is yours." And Izuku just looked at the two standing there, then stared towards the ceiling, and he said, "I guess you leave me no choice." And that is where I'm gonna be leaving this one off. Thank you guys for sticking around all the way to the end of the video. Honestly, I appreciate each and every one of you, and tell me what you think in the comments about this what if. Was it too gory? Was it just right? You know, what I could change? Tell me your opinion on the story. And as I mentioned in the start, more what ifs in the spirit of Halloween will be coming out, so make sure you like and subscribe, or else Zombie Izuku will be waiting for you the next time you walk past an alleyway.